Okay, welcome to another episode of Panakal Podcast for Geeks, a show about good friends hanging out, talking about things we love. Our guest today is Nikki Dawes, and you know my co-host Andrew Sides. Whoops, I think I just clicked away from the screen. We're good. I'm okay. We're gonna talk. I would like to start, by talking about your artwork and stuff. Obviously, you've got a ton of clients under your belt, which I thought was very impressive. But
Well,
having gotten
thanks.
to know you in the last couple of weeks a little better, I feel like you're very panicky about your work, even though your work's amazing.
Okay, panicky? I don't know about panicky, but like anxious, yes. I think it's because I feel like I've come into all of this very late. Uh that like I
Oops.
just I think my first official job was in like fantasy art was 2019. So I feel like I have a lot of catching up to do. And
Okay.
you see these young kids coming like right out of high school and stuff, and you're just like, oh, geez, really? I was talking to a friend about that the other day. I was like, I am so old, and these kids are so amazing. Like, how? And then he was like, Nikki, the internet was totally different when we were coming up. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't have
Yeah,
all of this stuff. We had like two places, and everybody had that like fine art mentality of don't share how I do this, because if I
Right.
tell
yeah,
you how to make the sausage, you'll be able to make the sausage. And like, so nobody shared anything. But now it's like a content mill to share your process.
Right. And we don't. We didn't even have access to half the stuff we have. We didn't have Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter.
I
No,
was
we
gonna
Um.
had
say we had
DeviantArt
like
and CA.
Oh, nice.
exactly,
Make us all
and
old, why
and
don't you?
No, I just like did Thanos just snap? I think I feel myself crumbling into dust.
What are you saying, Andrew?
no, I was gonna say yeah, it was just EA that we really had. Like yeah, DeviantArt too, but
Dude, I never got
that
into
being super
DeviantArt.
helpful.
Oh,
DeviantArt
it was
was
always bad.
Yeah, well, DeviantArt was when it came. Well, let's see here. I was working a corporate job when it first became a thing, and I was still kind of. I had just got out of art school, and I happened to be working a networking job, which is all I can get. But DeviantArt came out. I thought this is a great place for me to show my artwork, put stuff out there, and it just turned into a. I felt a little bit like intimidated by it, right? So I was just like, I don't want to play in this game, like, and I never used it. Obviously, it didn't make or break my career, but
No,
Yeah,
I not like not used since the mid aughts. I think is like the last time I even looked at it. But
I mean, it looks vastly. I looked at it a couple months back because somebody, I think maybe it was you, Andrew, or somebody posted in Rusty saying how they changed their layout and formatting. It looks a little bit like ArtStation to a certain
oh
degree.
yeah, I might have mentioned that offhand or whatever.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, it's cleaner. Um,
It's cleaner, but the content's still not great.
yeah, right, exactly.
To put to put it lightly.
Yeah, to put it lightly, it still looks the same. For anyone who's
well,
watching, feel free to ask questions. I keep meaning to type that in there, but the multi-stream isn't working right for some reason.
but I guess I
Like
should
you,
say that my very first job working in industry was for D&D.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
yeah. Uh, that came around
Oh,
uh,
wow.
an interesting way. People were like, "How did you start working for D&D?" Well, let me tell you how. You won't be able to recreate it. Um, uh, I was doing. I was so the years leading up for me doing a career switch. I was working for a statewide newspaper.
Okay.
I was like an illustrator, like graphic artist. So I would do um, some illustrations for like some stories, and also like maps and stuff, like a road closure is going to be here for like 10 years or whatever, thrilling stuff. um
That sounds exciting.
uh and well, it was an interesting job.
Sure.
News happens fast, and I learned to have to work fast. Like, deadlines are hours, not months, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. But I don't know if you know this or not, but the print industry is kind of dying.
Yeah.
And so, like, as I was going through, in the years in the paper, like, work became less and less. And so I was just sitting there on my ass all day long. Like, some days it would be like nothing to do. And my husband was doing his taxes one year, found Critical Role, started watching it, saw the art reel, told me about
Yep.
it, said, Nikki, you should, do something for this. You could have your art on this. And I wasn't into D&D at the time, not for any specific reason other than like when I was coming up, like girls were verboten in that in that space. And so and I got bored enough at work to start watching it, and then got into it enough to start doing fan art. And then my fan art got noticed by the cast, and then eventually I got invited out to LA to that gallery show that they did
Yep.
at Nucleus, and there were some cryptic like things said, about like you don't know what's coming up. We've got a lot of stuff, under our belts coming up that we can't talk about. And needless to say, it was that first the Explorer's Guide to Wild Mount that they did that they'd
Oh,
already kind of
sweet.
been in discussions with. And so what happened there is I believe it was Matt who who asked the ADs at Wizards, say, hey, we've got some of our own artists that we would love to bring in onto this project. And they gave them a list. I was on it, and I got it. I literally got an email from Wizards, and I was like, first of all, I spent half the day trying to verify if it was
Right.
real. Because I
Everybody
was
does
like,
that.
no, nope, this is some. I shan't get bamboozled. And and so and it was legit, and
Yeah.
I've been working for them ever since. It's kind of surreal that being my first official
That's
job,
awesome.
but yeah, sorry you can't recreate that. People who are wondering what the pipeline is.
It's
You know what? I was gonna say like that always kind of grinds my gears whenever people like ask like, oh, how did you get in or whatever? Because it's like never in a
never the
million
same.
years. It's never the
Right.
same. There's
Right.
always like some coincidences, some amount of luck, some circumstance that's going on for that particular time. And it's
Right.
like you could do all the exact same things and nothing can happen from it. It
There
is
are artists
total
who
like
are
throwing spaghetti at the
yes,
wall.
exactly. Like it's just, they just happen to see it. Just
Right.
happened to like the time happened to coincide perfectly. They were scrolling on whatever social media and just happened to see it. And I mean, you can do things to increase your own luck, like making sure that like your ability to be contacted is readily available, like because no art director is going to
Clean
want
up your
to
websites.
dig. Yes, if like I stopped even having like my own website.
Oh, you just
Yeah,
have
I
it on
noticed you're using
ArtStation, right?
ArtStation.
Yeah, because I I was talking to a bunch of ADs. I'm like, they are very familiar with that
Right.
platform. And so it's like, okay, if I'm looking for an email address, I know exactly where to look. I know where ArtStation always has it. And so it's just
I
one of
gotcha.
those convenient things where, you get 2 seconds, and if there's any problem navigating the site, bye, see you. I don't care if your work is great. Like, I'm not going to
I
futz
mean,
around.
I've told lots of artists like a Squarespace site, even a Wix site now looks better than it used to, but even a Squarespace site is really not that hard to set up. It's just
Right.
sometimes I feel like artists, I'm guilty of this myself. Like my current site's got a black background because in my head I was like, oh, space. I do space stuff. I'll make it black. And then now I'm like, maybe I should have left it white. But aesthetically it works. But I'm like half and half. But I was talking to Andrew about this the other day. I want to reboot it and just make it white because I feel like keep it standard, keep it clean. You're just trying to get information to an art director, for example.
I was gonna say, as long as it's legible.
Right. I mean, mine's legible.
If
It's not bad. It's just different, right? And I feel like when it's different, you throw them off a little bit because now they're like, what the fuck am I? Just whatever. I can swear on the show. It's my show. Like, people are like, what the fuck am I just
It's your
looking
show,
at?
man.
I literally hesitated because for a second, people don't know this. My kid was in the room until about 5 minutes ago. So I hesitated in my brain. I was like, you just dropped an F-bomb.
Oh no.
She's at that age, and you know this. Nikki, you said you used to be a nanny. Kids get to that age. Andrew, how old's your kid right now?
3.5.
It's coming.
Yep.
Like
They're gonna find a favorite one, and that's all they're gonna say.
Oh, she's already been like that.
Yeah.
She's somehow learned that like how to use certain squares in certain contexts.
Yeah.
Because like, there's been times where she'll drop something and she goes, "Oh shit!" I'm like, first off, you shouldn't be saying that.
Right.
Second, how do you
No,
know to
use
use
it
it?
correctly.
Yeah, my kid will say, like, she's heard me say enough, like, inflections, I guess, so she uses them, like, I say awesome a lot, but I say it in, like, the different, like, the disappointed, like, awesome, or, like, awesome, and she does exactly the same thing, and I'm just like, yeah, you're using that well, good job. Like, the other day, my wife said something to her, and she looked at my wife, and she said, what the what? I was like, I don't remember teaching her that one, like, so, but yeah, like, I think it's cool that you got to do. I know I have a couple friends who've done gallery shows like that and then gotten contacted by an AD later. I've never. I think like I'm not stressed about it, but I always thought about like if I should have. I've had ADs in the past ask me to change a little bit of things here and there with my style, and I'm always like, nah. Like hire me for the way I know how to draw. Right. This is this is how I. So we had this somebody in the Rusty had posted up a thing for portfolio reviews the other day. And I'm not going to name drop her, but I had messaged her and been like, hey, can you look at mine? And she had mentioned maybe like changing my style. Like she said, your saturated colors are great. Your work's fine. But like somebody like Watsy or D&D will not want to use this because doesn't fit their aesthetic, right? It doesn't look anything like they put out. So her suggestion was I maybe like dial it down a little bit to their level, basically, right? For the work. And she had posted her ArtStation. Hold on one second, guys. Thank you.
To not have dead air. I think
I asked for water.
There are two ways to look at that. Like, yes, if there's a specific client in mind that you really want to work for, then you need to have your look cater to what they're used to.
Correct.
But also, I think of like in recent years with Magic, how many artists they've recently brought on board. When I say recently, I'm old, so and time is a flat circle, so it could be anywhere in the last 5 years. Like, but I think of like Wiley Beckert. Her
she's not at all what I would think for it initially.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that like really polished digital. It's very like traditional with earth tones, line based, something that's vastly different than what they normally bring on. But because it's just good art. They're like your style can be good enough to supersede their traditional like want is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, I've heard I can't remember who told me Wiley's story, but I remember hearing about how she did exactly that. She catered it towards I think she has Magic cards now, right? So she catered it towards Magic and got the job.
She
so like this
had a Patreon post years ago discussing like Magic was not a client for her at that time, but like she was discussing like how to maybe shift in that direction.
Yeah.
And so she had like a step by step of what she did, which was like take a bunch of Magic art that she liked and put it right next to her stuff, and then like it was one of those like spot the difference sort of things. And then like so she took a piece and like shifted it towards it still looked very much like her stuff, but it was kind of more in that direction. And I don't know, maybe that was what did it, but I like that's lived in my head since she posted it.
I mean, it's not like you said, it's not a bad idea. It's like a good angle to do.
It's not. It's like I don't know if y'all remember Francis Vallejo posting on Muddy Colors about that, where in his case he was like, this was like in terms of like finding your style, where it's like you have your goal folder of like all the artists that you admire. You're like, this is the work I want to do, and you kind of like pepper your work in there so you can compare contrast. And that's like the professional way of doing it with like here's what Wizards art looks like. Does my art look like it can fit within that or not? And if not, why? What is it lacking, or what is it different about it?
Right. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to draw any other way. That's unfortunate for me, I guess.
But I feel like you've got like a really solid look though. Like, I mean,
yeah, that's why I'm not stressed. That's why I don't stress it. Yeah, it looks like I'm happy with the way I do it. And like I've had art directors from WotC approach me, and I am actually in talks with directors who have been trying to get me something. So that makes me feel like don't change it, right? But then there's that little like itch where I'm just like, what if I changed it a little bit? But then somebody else gave me really good advice last week, which was another artist who works for Magic. But he said, like, the thing is, you draw uniquely in your own way, and if you switch to cater to them, then you're gonna get stuck in that format.
You're like
right?
you're like all the others then too, possibly.
Well, you might end up like all the others, but they're gonna be like, oh, he can do this. Let's just keep hiring him to do this. Versus this is what I really want to do. So then, like,
that's exactly what's happening to me. I just a character artist, and
Yeah.
they just, I mean, like, and I just get characters. So they drip feed me some scenes that are like
Sure.
more character focused. But I mean, that was like part of the reason signing up for Cynthia's Smart School
Yep.
class, because first of all, she's in the pantheon of people I want to be when I grow up, even though we're the same age. And I think at this point it's gonna have to be a
you don't know how
Highlander
old she is.
situation.
She could be living for, as far as I'm concerned, she's been living for years. We just can't figure it out yet because she's too damn good at what she does. I've seen
Oh
the
my
class. I've seen her
God.
paint over. You know, they do paint overs, right, Andrew, in class, and like
Mhm.
she's very much like, that's the one thing I'm always shocked. Like Scott does this in our class too. Where, like, an artist will submit a piece, and it's everyone's work looks vastly different. There's no two people in this class where you're like, they look the same. Like they're both like, they both like Jim Lee. Everything looks like Jim Lee or something, right? Everyone's work looks different. And both these instructors have this uncanny ability to like paint over your work and just be like, here's something I could. They're all suggestions, right? You don't actually have to do it.
Right.
There's a ton of stuff Scott says to me where I'm like, nah, and it still works fine. But there's a lot of stuff where I learn, and Cynthia's the same way. You don't see it, right? And then she paints over your thing, and you're like, holy crap! And it's like,
I am the biggest idiot. How did I not see that?
yeah, it's like the basic, like a basic level. In Scott's thing, I always forget the simple thing, Andrew. Literally, I use lasso tool a lot for my style, right? So the simple trick for shadows is literally selecting an area with the fucking lasso tool, drop a black in there, drop the fill down a little bit, and you've got a basic gradient shift in shadows. And it works perfectly for my style. And it can work in other styles, but you got to play around with it a little bit more. And I was watching Cynthia draw over your last piece, and I was like, oh, my Lord. Like, but you know what? Honestly, your piece wasn't that bad. I thought it was
wasn't
fine.
that bad.
I saw the look on your face. You're like, oh, I did this. I was tired of this. I'm like, oh, man, she's really picking her own work apart. But
you get like,
I kind of understand it now because you're talking about how you kind of don't. It sounds like you want to do more. Do you want to do more landscapes and less character pieces?
So like this year has kind of been like a crisis year for me.
Sure.
In terms of like, I don't know if it's like a midlife thing, or it's just kind of like I've gotten into this for a few years and now I'm kind of seeing like the seedy underbelly. But like
Sure.
the very beginning of this year, like literally day one, January 1st, the D&D Twitter account tweets out like a piece of my art. It's a satyr. Like doing like,
oh, I remember this. Go on.
And it became this whole thing, this was not my first foray into online harassment at all.
Sure.
It just was one of those. I've had several instances, and I call them like they feel very much like I was walking down the street and somebody drove by and threw a milkshake on me. Like that's kind of what it feels like, because it's an unexpected thing. It's not like I said something or posted something myself. It's somebody else posted something, and then that's inviting stuff in. And so that became a whole thing. I was like, there were calls for me to be fired.
What?
I'm like, I'm a contract worker. It doesn't work that way.
Wait, I missed this.
They posted images from the book, basically, and then all these dumbass Redditors.
Because it was a satyr, and because it was a rainbow.
With the satyr.
It was promoting the gay agenda. And there were certain
people
who didn't like that, which it was, which that was awful, like, because it was inviting a lot of, harassment in that regard.
Right.
And like, I hate to see my friends get hurt by having to see that stuff. And like, I kind of felt like my art invited that sort of hate. I don't know. Anyway, I was told like I should unalive myself and like all of this stuff because of this piece of art that had nothing to do with anything. And like it wasn't even for that. It was just a freaking satyr. And so like because that was
which book was that in? I forget.
That was Monsters of the Multiverse.
Okay, let me find it.
But like my very first foray into being harassed for like my art was I worked for HeroQuest. I was
You didn't work
working
on
for Hasbro.
HeroQuest?
Yes.
Dude, HeroQuest is one of my all-time favorite board games. I've never invested in the Kickstarter. I really am pissed at myself for not doing
Well,
that.
I was a stretch goal, and then I also did the knights. So I did the orc bard, the druid,
cool.
and both of the knights. But the old school people, that's who most of my harassment comes
it'll be
from.
that usual thing where it's like, oh, this doesn't look like what I imagined.
Exactly.
What I
And so
remember.
there were hashtags trying to be started, like all this stuff. They were very angry with me.
You're just pissing everybody off, aren't you?
I know, but see, I had just started. Like, so I quit working for the newspaper in like November of 2019. So I'm sorry the pandemic was my fault. It was because I quit my 9 to 5. I will wear that on my shoulders. I'm so sorry, everybody.
I mean, who's
Um,
reading? I used to work for the Tribune, and who's reading a newspaper? I have
Nobody.
not seen the only person. I haven't. I used to live in the city. I never saw anyone reading a newspaper. I moved out just outside the city now in this house, and my next door neighbor is the first person I've seen in years who gets the newspaper delivered to his house. Because I see that roly poly newspaper boy go by. He gives me this eyeball. He eyeballs me like he wants to start shit. And I'm just like, what? What did I do to you, kid? And
You gotta create news.
You didn't subscribe.
Feel like yes, I didn't subscribe, and I also feel like if I turn my back on him when he goes by, he's gonna zing me with the newspaper. So I always like him and I just stare each other down as he goes by. He's a smart kid though. He goes by on those like one wheeled segways or whatever they are. You look like Gizmo Duck on those things. Just rolls by on that thing, throws the paper. So yeah, so you quit your job. Oh, by the way, here's the image. By the way, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's just to see.
That's what
anyone who's got a
what
problem with
yeah,
that is just like I saw some of that and I saw some of the they posted another image of yours like a month or two ago.
Yes.
And a bunch of people were like, I don't think this is drawn really well. And you know what? I messaged you privately to be
Yes,
like, hey man, your stuff's great. Don't let any of this stuff get to you. Because I hate that shit so much. I'm not working in these industries, but when I see my friends have to deal with that, I'm just like, and I looked up some of those people that are commenting. I really want to just be like, comment in that thread and be like, oh, I see your artwork's outstanding, sir. And by outstanding, I mean it doesn't exist. So what the fuck?
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it, exactly. It's a friend of mine, David LaRocca, gave me good advice back in it because when I was first shifting, there's an incident that some of my friends know about when I was doing fan art when I first started. I don't talk about it too much, but there was a moment where like I used to use sideshows as my main reference because I didn't have models or anything. And I was at a show where this artist called me out publicly saying he's using sideshows as models. He's not really an artist, and they were saying I was cheating and just drawing over them and stuff. And I was like, I was gonna like break down my whole process in the chat window in the thread, but my friends were like, "Don't say shit because it's like blood in the water." That's what they want you to say. And as I researched further, I realized it was just a bunch of like random people I don't even know. For some reason, it seemed to be a lot of cosplayers. Somehow I pissed them off by using Sideshow Collectibles as reference. I don't know why. But it was coming at me for a good 16 hours. So there's a 16-hour window there where I used to deal with a lot of depression back in the day. So for those 16 hours, I was very like borderline suicidal, super stressed out because I was at this show and I was being bombarded. Then I was being harassed at my booth. And half my booth was the fan art stuff because it was like, I was just trying to get rid of the last tail end of it. So at this point, I'd been doing Ancient One stuff for almost a year. I had a brilliant idea to do a fire sale on the fan art stuff. By brilliant, I mean it was stupid. I should have just kept it. But it was a small show in India, and I thought I can just get rid of this last of this stuff and call it a day. Make some extra money. I had a kid on the way. It didn't work out the way I wanted it to. The Ancient One stuff sold. The funny thing is, some of the people that were calling me on that thread stopped by the booth to give me a hard time about the fan art, ended up buying Ancient One stuff, which was weird to me. They apologized for their behavior. Never took their post down, which I was like, take your post down. But, David was one of those people who was like, don't comment. They want you to comment so they can keep. And I see this happening online all the time, right? Like artists will put out something, some keyboard hero, I put quotes on the word hero, comes by and says some jacked up shit. Yeah. So Tani is in the chat. She was one of those friends I reached out to be like, I don't know what to do right now. This has never happened to me before. Like, I'm not doing any of these things these people are saying. I've openly admitted to using the statues as reference. I never deny my references. But, yeah, like, they told me to just keep quiet, and, like, it died out eventually, which is whatever. And
They get bored.
But the one thing it did do to me is it pushed me to focus more on ancient ones a little harder. Like, a couple weeks later, I burned all that fan art, focused hard on ancient ones. That's when I started taking classes with Scott as well, because I went to Dragon Con the year after. I met Scott there, and he was like looking at my style, and he's like, it was heavy on pen tool in Illustrator and a little bit of the trace tool when I did clouds and stuff. I'm not gonna lie, I use a trace tool. It's a fucking tool. I'm gonna use it. When I use clouds, I'm not gonna draw clouds. Fuck clouds. But like, I use pen tool, and then Scott and Ron Lemon, I mentor, and those two, they were the ones who were like, why aren't you just using the lasso tool in Photoshop? And I'm a graphic designer, so my wheelhouse used to be a lot of Illustrator work.
There's a pipeline because I started out with graphic design.
Yeah, and there's a point where you're just like, this sucks. Because you said you work for the paper too. So I used to work for the Chicago Tribune, okay? Never got any
Bro,
of the hot
how much
news.
overlap is there?
Right,
is there like a very specific pipeline that we just went down?
I mean, Andrew went straight into advertising. Andrew's like, fuck all this shit. Like,
yeah.
He like literally video game leaps to the other side of the island.
Yeah.
But that's when I started developing my style a little more. I realized I can do stuff with the lasso tool. I focused a little bit more because in my head I was like, someone's still gonna pick your work apart every time, because welcome to being an asshole. But I don't have to go through that again. And I also learned to just ignore it. It happened, like I was telling you guys before we went live, I will still get hate from some incidents that happened 2 years ago. We're not gonna talk about it, but I will post something on Instagram. I'll get some hate from somebody. I just delete it. Sometimes people catch it. Sometimes I'm quick about deleting it. But it still happens because everyone's a keyboard hero, and I can't stand this shit. And I saw the stuff they were posting about your stuff, and I was just like, who are these people that are so upset about a fictional character that's in in this case, a monster manual? And I forget the other one. It was from the last...
Spelljammer.
Spelljammer, yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is like a lot of the stuff is not actually like directed at me. Like they don't even know that I'm the
it goes to the
artist.
companies.
Well, no,
Yeah.
it's like these posts are just posting my art, and like they don't look in like the little, in the margin to see
That you're a
that my
person?
name. They don't care.
Right.
They're not saying like this specific artist is bad. We hate all of her stuff. They're saying this specific art, I saw it, it sucks. Like there was a post on Reddit, I think it was like last year. It was like, what do you think about 5th edition art? And I was like, oh, I'll look at this. Big mistake. Huge. Because specifically there were posts like this art, which was my art. They didn't know I did it, but this art is the worst art I've ever seen in 5th edition. This person should be ashamed. Obviously they don't pay these people enough because they can only get shit tier artists. And I'm like, oh God. And like, the problem, everybody's like, well, you get compliments, so like that should outweigh like the bullshit, but it never does,
Never
because
does.
when you have imposter syndrome, they're basically just confirming what is already in your head about yourself. And so it's like, oh yep, I think that too. They're definitely right.
Yep.
Like, yeah, do I wish I could paint like Keith Parkinson? Fuck yes, I do. Like,
Oh, it's
absolutely.
so
like
good.
that
Yeah.
that's the dream. That's how I got into this whole thing.
Yeah.
Keith?
But
Yeah.
yeah.
You can have 99 compliments and 1 criticism, and you're going to be like, yeah, that 1% though.
You focus right on that guy, right? You're like, this
Yeah.
guy right here.
Yeah, that person will eat away at you, even though you got like 99 compliments to outweigh it.
Yeah, I've had people who are like, your art doesn't do it for me. I'm like, cool. But it took me years.
Say that shit?
Right? But it took me years to get to that to that point, right? That I was gonna say stepping stone, but that sounds stupid. It took me years to get to that level where I'm just like, and now I'm not gonna lie, there's occasionally somebody will say something to me, but it took me years. I think what it is also is being in Scott's class. There was when I first started taking Scott's class, I'm still not good at anatomy. That's why I'm taking his character development class. This last 2 semesters, I feel like I've grown a lot. Andrew's helped me like create. So I always do like a 3D build to get my perspective down for a model, because again, I don't have money to pay models for reference. I used to consistently look through like Pinterest or something for the angles I wanted. But with the 3D builds, I'll like tell Andrew what I'm looking for. He helps me build it. I sketch off of that, and then I've been sketching on top of it, and I sketch. Scott has a thing that says drawing is redrawing, so I'll sketch over and over and over. And each of these last ones I've drawn over at least 16 times, so it's perfect. And then I develop it, but it took years to get there. And being in that class, I will get. So somebody asked Scott in the last semester, like she was like, "You're really nice with your critiques, and you're really like." Holding hands with the students, you don't like rip into them. He's like, but I do. He's like, I rip into people like Allen, and he will. He'll literally look at me and be like, "You know better than this. Why did you draw it like this?" And but the thing is,
you guys have that rapport.
Correct. I've known Scott for years, but it also has built a little bit of like a tougher shell on me because now when people say some jacked up stuff in my head, I'm like, yeah, man, I'm out there doing the thing. If you don't like it, you don't like it. Fine. Because at the end of the day, you're not paying my bills, right? If you're over here feeding me and paying my bills and like taking care of me, yeah, go ahead, man. Speak your mind a little bit. Even then, I might ignore you. Tell my wife.
You said that the harassment was the impetus for you to sign up for art school.
Well, that was the impetus for me to like really focus down on the Ancient One stuff and start thinking about how it's like I stopped when that happened. I stopped using, for starters, the sideshow models as reference and started asking questions to other artists like, "What do you guys do? How do you guys do it?" And like people like Tawny and like Tyler Walpole and stuff, they all gave me advice on like photography and looking up stuff and then like finding little things like that. And then when I started,
I didn't know how much reference real artists use. It's blowing my mind.
Because you're told that you don't use reference, right?
You know?
Because you're told forever that you're told by artists like. Artists don't use reference. Like there's that story about Frank Frazetta, how he doesn't use reference, and then what happened? The dude dies, and they find like binders full of like bodybuilders, right? What was he just staring at those?
Didn't he also like start lifting in order to use
the dude
himself
was
as a reference?
Sure, but there were photographs and full of reference, and that's the thing. We were always taught like reference is like this evil thing. Like when I first heard about, there's a lot of magic artists, I'm not going to call them out by name, who use like ZBrush and other things to build their models, and they paint on top of it, and they look amazing. Like you would not be able to tell.
Who do that too.
And what's wrong with that? It's a tool.
Nothing.
You should be able to use it.
It's just a tool, right?
Yeah. What did Tony say? Yeah, Tony said you can be the ripest, juiciest peach in the world, and there will still be somebody who hates peaches. Yeah.
Yep.
Fuck you if you don't like peaches, by the way, because peaches are delicious.
They're cloyingly sweet.
Better than pears.
Okay, here's a question: do you like peaches or nectarines? Because they look the same. Fuck you, Nikki.
Yeah,
that's fine. Make a Reddit thread, Allen. Go ahead, call me out. Tweet about it.
I'll be like, Nikki Dawes does not like peaches or nectarines. By the way, here's a satyr she drew.
I don't dislike them.
I'm just joking. I don't care if you don't
like
them.
Not my choice. Like if there was, a spread, an array, those would not be the first.
Those would not be your go-tos.
I mean, like okay, peach cobbler versus blackberry cobbler. I'm gonna get blackberry every time.
Peach cobbler is good though.
No. Blackberry cobbler though.
See, 2 against 1.
You're from Texas. You're from Florida. Florida has no
I'm
opinion.
from Arkansas.
Oh, there you go. I don't know anything about Arkansas.
The reason why I brought up Texas because I was talking about your horrible drivers there, and they bleed over into my state, and I have to drive.
I'm not from Texas. I'm from Chicago.
No, just talk to the audience.
Chicago's got 2 speeds, right? Like it's literally like, if you're on the highway in Chicago, there's literally like Tokyo Drift racing through. Like, where are you guys going? Or are you part of some like bubblegum run I'm not aware of? If you guys know what the bubblegum run is. Or a cannonball run. No, bubblegum run is what they call it. Cannonball's a movie. Bubblegum is what is actually a real thing. I think it's like rich people racing their fast cars. Or you got the slow drivers. They just come to a dead stop in the middle of the highway after doing 60. And you're like, thanks, motherfucker. I almost rear-ended you twice. I've been to Texas. I actually went to, my cousin's son is in Houston, and I hate Houston, by the way. But as we were getting closer to Houston, my cousin warns me. Prasad's like, "Hey, just so you know, people in Houston drive like nothing is around them."
No,
right?
They'll go on the freaking grass on the side of the highway. I'm like,
they just drive like the road is there, and they're just the only ones there. And these pickup drivers, like at one point, this driver like cut between me and this other car. It came out of nowhere. And it kept happening. And I was like, why? And there's a lot of pickup trucks in Houston. Welcome to Texas. But they got some ridiculously big wheels on them, too. And I'm like, man, I hate Houston. And it's congested. And it's hot.
Yes.
So it's a mixed bag. Florida's got a bunch of old people who just don't realize what an accelerator does.
You know what? It's not even that, because like I haven't seen a whole lot of old people driving lately. I don't know what that means.
That's
COVID.
Yeah.
Good
I was
or
gonna
bad.
say it, but that sounds so bad. It's what it is.
Well,
Now here's the thing. I
so
met.
you know what the bigger issue is you got a lot of people here that they're better drivers than they are, and then so they'll be driving, but then also like phone while driving, like head down, looking at their phone,
Yeah,
whatever, or
we have those
someone
here.
that you have some people that like, so Orlando especially, there's we have I-4 Interstate 4 that basically cuts through all of Orlando, the Central Florida area. You have a lot of people that will act on other roads like they're driving on I-4. The I-4 is like a 65 to 70 mile
Oh, they
an
do it on like
hour
the local
highway.
streets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like on fucking 1792, which is like the small highway, like used to be like artery road. Now it's like a four lane road or whatever. And people will still be treating that like, oh, I'm like Sonic on this. I gotta go fast. And it's like, holy shit, please not. Please no.
I actually can't drive on the highway anymore because of PTSD from a wreck.
Sure. Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, that was like part of like so the wreck happened in 2019, like spring. And then like it was kind of one of those black and white moments where it's like, what am I doing with my life? I hate what I'm doing. Like, why am I putting up with this shit? I nearly died. What happened was I was driving, my husband was in the passenger seat. We were gonna go to Memphis. And I get on the highway and I see that like traffic has slowed in the right lane. But the left lane is clear. I'm already like a nervous person and like anxious person, I should say, not nervous. Um, but I always like check my side view mirror, and then like if I don't see anything, I check my blind spot. It's just what I do. There
That's
was
what you
nothing
should
there.
do. Yep.
I know, but some people just like, meh.
Yep.
But you know, it was wide open. I pull into the left lane, and then all of a sudden I look in my rearview mirror, and there's a car right behind me. And they're going so fast that they actually pull into the median and lose control of their
No.
vehicle, push the nose of my car across all of the traffic into and underneath a moving 18-wheeler.
Oh shit.
Um,
That's scary.
Needless to say, I tried to Fast and Furious, but my car was a little too high. So what happened? Like, so uh the top of the car gets crushed in more on my husband's side than mine, and he does this and misses getting decapitated. Like
Oh,
dude, like
really?
Holy
ninjas out.
shit.
Yes, neither one of us were injured at all. I had like a little like glass like hit me and like a little tiny little scab on
Mm-hmm.
my arm. No, like the paramedics arrived there. They were looking for like two dead people.
Yeah.
So I was like, yep, I'm here. I'm sure I was on TikTok that day because everybody who was driving by was like filming, which
Probably
was
somewhere
kind
on
of a
there.
yeah. And but yeah. So come to find out, the guy was going like 120.
Holy crap.
Holy
He was
shit.
racing somebody else and was weaving in and out of traffic. And
That's why he just appeared out of nowhere. Yeah.
yes, and it was a 60. You know, so you're going double
Yeah.
the speed limit.
Oh
So
my
yeah,
God.
it was
That's scary,
yeah,
man.
so bad drivers, try to avoid them.
That's
By
like one of
not
my
getting on the
biggest
highway at all.
fears when I drive to shows, because I drive to I only fly to like usually two shows. It's a LuxCon, which I'm driving this year, but it's usually LuxCon in San Diego, because it's just usually like the LuxCon I really don't bring a lot of stuff with, and then San Diego is like too far to drive. It's like a 2-day journey, 3-day journey. So like I usually have I can't see out the back of my van at all. So
Right.
it's usually full. And then I rely on the mirrors. My new van's nice because it's got a little light that tells me somebody's actually in the blind spot. I still do the head check to make sure before I change. On the left side, it's easy. On the right side, if I have a friend with me, I'll be like, hey, look out the window. But if it's just me, I'm like, and I got to do this like slow, like I do like a
Jesus,
slow
take the
lane.
wheel.
Yeah. I try to stay in the same lane the whole time. But like, there's a moment where you got to go around a slow drive or something. And I'm just like, please just, I'll look again. I'll go real slow because I'm in a minivan. My chances of stopping fast are very, very slow. And, exactly what you just said, right? Some dude could be zipping along and you're just like,
Yep.
I just got clipped. And in a minivan, I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to roll, That's what I hate because it's usually the other drivers. You could be the most sane, safe driver on the road.
Yep, I had never had a car wreck until that moment.
I mean,
I was
consider
like,
yourself
"Oh,
lucky.
gonna
I've been
do
in a
it
bunch of
big."
them. I've been in a lot of wrecks, man. I hate none of them feel good.
No.
You can walk. I always say you can walk away. So when I was in high school, I got in a wreck where my knees hit I had an old '83 Corolla,
Oh.
which is basically a go-kart with like a fake tin can shell.
Mhm.
And I remember talking to my dad. I was a junior in high school, and I remember talking to my dad saying, "Hey man, those wheels look like they're a little bald. Like maybe we should replace those." Trusting my dad, and I'm still learning about cars at this point, so I don't know enough. I'm in high school, and it was my cousins gave me their old '83 Corolla, free car, right? Win in my favor. I drove that thing for almost a year and a half. My dad looked at the wheels and said, they're fine. You'll be okay, because this is like spring. It was fall, because I remember Halloween was 2 days later. And I was driving home from school literally the next day, and this dude like came straight at me on a neighborhood. I was like a little side street from the neighborhood. So he's coming straight at me, and I dodged, hit the brakes, and my car skid, 30 feet.
Because they were bald.
They were bald.
Tires.
Yeah, I
Oh,
skid like
no.
20. It was at least
No.
20 feet into a parked car. And luckily, I was only doing like 20, 25 because it was a little main like residential area. But I remember I hit this car. My knees hit the bottom of the dash. My steering wheel, I like bent it. My seatbelt came off. The fucking seatbelt came off in the middle of the hit. And I hit the steering wheel. My glasses, I remember, flew off my face, hit the windshield, and went somewhere in the back seat. And then I couldn't breathe because my chest hit the steering wheel. And I remember looking to my right, and the car I hit belonged to a really like an old Italian woman who comes out of her house with two dudes following her dressed like goons. They were in suits coming out of the house, like adjusting their jackets. I'm looking, I'm like, oh shit, I'm about to die. And I'm like, open the door, and I couldn't feel my legs. I fell out of the car. That was the only time I couldn't walk away from an accident. And I remember like I couldn't breathe, and the two guys came up to me, and they were like, are you okay? I'm like, I literally looked at them and said 911 because I need an ambulance, I thought. They helped me up. Air is returning to my lungs. Cop shows up. He's looking at my license, and he's like, where are your glasses? You should be wearing glasses. I'm like, yeah, man, they flew off my face on impact. And I haven't found them yet. I used to have these like giant, like old school. They're really popular now, but back then I was a geek. So they're old school glasses. He found them. I remember I had to be taken to the hospital because my knees were jacked up. He issued me a ticket for speeding, even though the lady literally vouched for me and said, I saw the car cut him off. You can see where he hits his brakes. Like, she was a really nice old Italian lady. She came to my hearing when I was supposed to get a ticket and basically told the judge that this cop should have never issued me a ticket. And the judge basically like said, look, we're going to give you the ticket. It's like, whatever, $50. He's like, just, but she tried, to come fight with me in court, The cop was there. She basically told the judge this cop is just issuing tickets for no reason. It was nice of her. All I did was knock off her muffler, but, not the worst wreck I've been in, but I really thought I was going to get my ass handed to me by those two dudes. I was like, I'm killed. I mean, but I've been like, Chicago street races with my friends all the time. Like, we've been in some bad wrecks, but semi-truck, that's scary.
Yeah, there was,
buried under a truck.
they have those like things that they put on the side of them.
Yeah, the mud guards.
This one only had the one that are in the back that are like mandated now, so you don't,
Oh, is it so cars don't go under?
Mm-hmm.
I never knew.
But this one didn't have the side bits.
Oh,
that's like when you drive to like Georgia. There's a part of Georgia where it's all downhill. Well, it's uphill coming home, obviously. But it's like you can't brake, right? You can. It's hard to come to a stop because it's like so like inclined. And they have those. Have you seen those pull-offs for the trucks?
Yeah, I've seen them. I have not seen them in Georgia, but I've seen them in Colorado.
Yeah, so they're in Colorado too. And I've only ever once seen a truck pull up because you're supposed to just go vertical and then slowly come back down. And these trucks are like flying past you. And I'm like doing like maybe 65 because I've got my foot on the brake and I'm still rolling forward at like 60. And these trucks are just roaring past you. And I'm just like, if one of these trucks touches any of these cars, it's like going to be like GTA where you just get bounced, right? And I don't understand why I don't have a better way of controlling that. And I hate driving anywhere, but unfortunately,
Could be like me, just don't drive.
I mean, I don't work for Watsy and Hasbro like you. If I got some gigs in my belt, maybe I could stay home, but I need to make some money.
I have pulled back so much this year in terms of like.
Are you focusing on your own thing, or
I'm just trying to figure it out. Like,
okay.
The Seder thing was kind of
A
like
lot.
I rewarded myself, my future self, with signing up for the Smart School course.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was like, you talked about how depressed you were during that harassment period. And like, it was one of those like, why am I even doing this if this is kind of how I'm being treated? It's kind of not worth it to me. And because it's not like we make buku money. Like,
Right.
No.
Artists don't get paid.
Right.
And so like I could be working a much better paying job, and dealing with harassment would be a lot more palatable. But and so I signed up for the Smart School course, and I was really excited about that. And then like I kind of was dealing with like burnout, and I guess I'm trying to figure out like where I need to go.
Sure.
I think like a lot of, especially fantasy artists, like the top bullet point like goal is magic.
Yep.
And that, while that absolutely is a goal, like I would 100% love to do that. I know what's going to happen if it ever happens to me is that it's just going to be like an anxiety spiral of with imposter syndrome. Like, okay, let me back up. So when I got on with D&D, my brain does not allow me to just easily have happiness. Like the neurons don't connect. It's like, no, the shoe has to fall, the other one has to fall, like everything.
Sure.
And so because of imposter syndrome, my brain could not compute how I got in with D&D. Like because I didn't like work my way up like the traditional
So you
route.
have that like weird feeling in the back of your head. You're like, they're gonna find out about me at some point, and then it's all gonna come crashing down.
It's even worse than that. I thought like, okay, it's an irrational thought, but it's one of those that's like in the back of your head that you can't quite like get rid of. It was like, I am dying, and this is my make-a-wish, and nobody has told me I'm dying, but somebody has signed me up for this so I can work for D&D before I die. Like it completely like bonkers irrational thought.
That's your make-a-wish wish?
I know, but I
I get it.
Aim high.
I feel like all of us would have a little bit of like, I feel like I think any one of us would be the same way, because these are companies like, we're like, how do I say this? We put ourselves on this like level where we're like, I want to work. It's like all of us started out saying, I want to work for Magic, right? Mm-hmm. And some of us are still like, I really, really want to work. There's artists in our Rusty who are like, yeah, all of us do. But I'm at a point where it's like, if I get the gig, I get the gig. If I don't, whatever. Like, I can't focus on that, right? That's not like my thing. But there's a couple artists, friends of ours, who are, or maybe you are the same, who are like, I really want, they're pining for it. That's what they want, right? And I feel like both of us are on the same level, though, where if we did get the gig, we're going to be thinking the same way. We're going to be like, do I deserve this?
Yes.
Right?
And and so I think what I'm trying to do is shift into like more of what you were thinking is like, it's a goal and I want it, but it can't be the goal.
Correct.
Like I need something else for my brain.
That's just for your own sanity, right?
Yes, because I know what's going to happen is if I get the work, it's going to be like, okay, if I don't do this first time, it's got to be amazing, and if I don't, they'll never hire me again, and it's an absolute like anxiety spiral.
Yep. Because there's artists in our Rusty where I talk to them and I can hear that anxiety spirals you just said, where they're like, oh, I didn't get my I turned in my sketches, they didn't respond yet. Oh, I'm not hearing back anything.
Yeah.
Or they'll turn
That's
in their
what
stuff and
I
be like,
do that. Like when I first started with D&D, like I did because of my ignorance of the industry, I didn't know like how much stuff shifted around all the
sure.
time. Like where they'll say we're gonna send you your assignments at this date. Well, if I
Hmm.
didn't get it by that day, I'm like, I have been kicked off. They do
Right.
not want me anymore. They have seen that I suck and they do not desire to work with me anymore. And so I would send like, these brain weasel ass emails like, please tell me that it's okay and that you're still going to
I'm
contact me.
sure you're not the only one that's done that though.
Oh no, I'm sure the 80s are like, we are just constantly hurting cats,
Right.
and these cats are filled with anxiety.
Yep.
Welcome to being an artist.
They've all come from abusive homes and have been like
Yes.
given back,
Right.
so they're all like scared, weird, wet cats just running around.
Exactly.
Do you get into this industry if
Like,
you have self-esteem? No, you do
no,
not.
if you have got self esteem, you better be doing some crazy ass corporate work and making millions of dollars, right? Like we're literally nobody like this is going to be a deep dive, but nobody like we're raised without somebody telling us we're doing good work.
Right, and
Right?
so
If
that
any of our
praise
parents are the
seeking
same,
behavior, yes. Please
You
validate me
also
because I do not know.
no matter how many times my wife is like, "You
weird.
don't need approval from your parents." Yes, I kind of want it still. It won't make
You can
it won't make me any better, but it might be nice to hear.
Yeah.
So like going off of that though, you can also end up with the other edge of that imposter syndrome sword, where it's not like the anxiety spiral, but it's kind of like you get the goal that you want to do, and then you kind of realize like, oh, this didn't like do anything for me. Like
Correct.
nothing's changed. I'm still having to pay the bills tomorrow. Like it's not like all of a sudden I have overnight a claim or anything like that. And then
That's
Right.
you can get left with like this feeling of like, what the fuck do I do now? Because my whole sense of self was built up to this
right.
point, and I've hit this point, and now
Yep.
what?
Well, you have to do like so. Like when I first started doing shows like Dragon Con and Gen Con especially, the first time I did Gen Con is when I realized I really like board games and I can do board games. Right? Like I would love to do My goal was a board game cover. Like I want to do a board game cover. They don't pay a lot, but in my head I was like, how cool would it be? You make a board game with some big company here, and now everyone's playing this game that's got your artwork on it, right? And I worked hard to get some of those, just to work on those jobs, and I got a bunch of offers, but like they were low, and I was like, I finally did a game for Renegade Games, which is like a big company, right? If you know Renegade, they made a bunch of the biggest board games in the industry, and I did a game for them called Time Chase, which was not the big game. It was a small little game that you can carry in your backpack. But I was the guy who did all the artwork. In my head, I thought, this is it. It's happening. You're making the thing. You've got the cover.
And
You've got the cards.
nothing, yeah.
And nothing came. So the one thing that came up from it was other companies kept contacting me for work, but they just didn't feel as good as Renegade, and they didn't want to pay. Renegade paid me well, by the way. I negotiated with them. Right, they're really good at understanding artists are artists, and you got to pay them. Also, they're one of the bigger companies, like I mentioned, but some smaller companies would contact me to the point. There's one company that contacted me, and when I named my cost, they said, "We'll just hire an in-house artist to emulate your style." And I was just like,
Oh my god.
right there, yeah. Which I literally told them, don't ever say that to an artist. But my point is Renegade did contact me to do another game, but you realize you don't want it because they have these timetables where they're like, "Oh, we need this in 3 weeks," and I'm like, that ain't happening. And I was like, I need X. The first game I was able to negotiate time and money and get it all done. The first game I did a week after my kid was born. So there's points where I'd be holding her and drawing, right? Because in my head I was like, if you fuck this up, you're never getting a job in the industry again. Like, because Renegade's big. They're going to tell all their friends. These guys all talk. They're going to be like, this guy can't get the job done. Don't hire him. And that level of stress was there. Like Andrew was saying, you're like, you want the job, and then you get it, and you're like, what did I get from it?
Yeah.
I got some recognition at Gen Con, which was nice. Like people came to my booth, asked to have the game signed. That felt good for the 4 days I was at that show. And then nothing.
You can also get that with like annuals and that kind of thing too.
I tried for Spectrum so many times, right?
Yep.
It took a long time to be like, I'm not applying this year. Like, it doesn't make, like, I remember my friends would get in, I'd be like, I literally would be sitting there like, how? Like, what? Like, why didn't I get in? My work's good. And I got into Infected by Art 2 years in a row, and that felt good. but then I didn't get in last year. And I'll admit, it hurt because I was just like, I haven't changed anything. I actually submitted new work, right? And it all comes down to the jury and whoever's like, if the person people like judging the work don't
It's
like
as
your style,
I was gonna say it's as mercurial as like trying to get a job, where
right?
there's a million things that affect that decision and outcome, and any one of them could be a make or break thing for it, depending on which way the wind blows on it.
But like, I feel like any one of us could get a magic card, and then we'd be like super hyped, super anxious. We'll get it done. We'll probably lose sleep for like 2 or 3 weeks straight, and then we'll be sitting around like you were saying, like, are they gonna hire me again? Are they gonna give me another card?
Just
But
refreshing that email, and
yeah,
then there. Well, so the timetable on the release on Magic is way longer than D&D.
right.
And there's an interesting thing that happens when my work gets released every time with D&D is it sucks. Because I did it a year ago and I hate it
You're much
so
better
much.
now. You're like, oh,
Yes, and so it's like,
Yeah,
"Oh, hey, let me hold up this piece of shit that I did last year that I wasn't considering all of the stuff that I have now learned." Or, I can see
that's just
where
welcome to the industry, right?
yeah, and so but it's gonna be even worse with Magic because, like, it's a year or 2 years,
That's yeah. That's like the Kamigawa
and
stuff came out, and everyone kept messaging me. They're like, "You have got to have a card in here somewhere." I'm like, "You think, right?"
those are oh god.
I was like, "You would
Yeah.
think my stuff fits perfectly in this world, and yet nothing." But then it was It literally they started the process for it 2 years ago,
2 years ago.
and 2 years
Yeah.
ago I wasn't at this level. So now it's I started getting a little more serious about applying because I met an AD at LuxCon in 2019. 2019, I think it was, where they were like, I literally didn't realize they were an AD for WotC. I'm not going to name them, but they came by the booth and they were like, you ever consider submitting to WotC? And I said, no, my work doesn't fit WotC's aesthetic. That's what I said because I was a little buzzed. And the AD just looked at me, and my friend who was standing with him looked at me like, what the hell's wrong with you? And I was like, and then they said, I think it does. And I was like, really? I'm like, who are you? And they dropped their name, and I was just like, like,
Stomach
all
fell
the,
up my ass.
all the cylinders started going off in your head. I sobered up in like 10 seconds. Because, at LuxCon, my friends bring me drinks, and I drink it because I'm in the showcase, right? I'm just standing around, not selling shit, just trying to show off my work. So then after that, I started emailing this AD every time I did a new piece. I would send it to them, and now I'm friends with them to a degree where I send stuff to them on Discord, like when I create new stuff. I'm like, here's a new piece. And they've been trying. Now, I'm at a level where, like, if I did I feel like I'd probably get land cards, right? Because I'm a landscape guy mainly. I am working on character design with Scott. If I got characters, I probably would really stress myself out because I'm better at landscapes. But I do feel like if I were to just say get landscape cards, I finish them, and they never hired me again, I don't think I'd stress it because it's like a bucket list item for me now, right? Like I would use a name recognition if something happened from it to literally hawk ancient ones. And they'd be like, oh, you like my cards? I got this cool IP that I'm working on called Ancient Ones, like
I want to go to there. I want to get to that place where
I think you can do your own IP. I absolutely see it happening.
I don't know that. Okay, so I was talking to another illustrator friend of mine. I am not like an artist in which I want to come up with my own thing and like do it. I'm sick in the head and like the confines of being told like
You
I
like
like the
somebody
puzzle
just
solving.
art directing you,
I
basically.
get it.
Yeah.
I want the puzzle solving part of it.
I think
And I
Andrew's
guess
the same.
I could potentially facilitate that for myself, but then there's still there would be no pushback really unless like I was really, really strict on myself, which I do that.
Well, hey, you
But
wanna come draw us something in my RPG? Because I'm working on something.
I mean maybe.
Maybe I'll have you draw a satyr with some rainbows. I'm just kidding.
Sure. I yes. Satyr Part 2 Electric Boogaloo.
We'll find
I'm
every
down.
piece. We'll find every piece that they don't like, and then we'll draw that again.
Amazing. I'm here for it. But I mean like I'm that's what I'm trying to figure out is like where to go from and okay. So in that class that you okay, Andrew, do you know your boy is like big on the ABCs? Always be closing. Like this
Oh yes.
dude sees
Oh
me
yeah.
in class
Alan sells all the time.
And he sees me like struggling in this critique and like sends me a DM on the meeting software and he's like, "Hey, you should go on my podcast." Not that he hasn't asked
Oh
me
yeah,
before.
I asked her before.
I had jury duty, but like
You
he's like,
did.
so I'm sitting here sweating in Cynthia's class, like my stuff isn't getting torn apart or anything, but it's like you're not really hitting it right. Like there's this isn't really doing what you want it to do, and I'm just like floundering, and he's like, "Hey, by the way, you should be on my podcast." Um, but anyway,
And then what? And then what? You ended up on the show, right?
yes, I did, but.
See,
It
go ahead.
Cynthia was I was talking when you messaged me that Cynthia and I were discussing like I have this I've asked several people in the industry who are much more skilled than I am like advice because the pay is generally low and I've had in my head that I shouldn't work longer than X amount of time because if I go over that amount of time that means I'm making like less than wage.
Right.
But apparently that's not what they do. And they always say it with the caveat, like, obviously you have to work within the constraints of what is viable for you in terms of your livelihood.
Mm-hmm.
But they think of every piece like I have to do the utmost with this piece to make sure it's the best that it can be because you're going to get hired off of your newest stuff, and so if it's subpar then maybe
Is that true? Because I've seen artists submit some like really good stuff and then like not so good in your head. I see it and I'll be like, I know this artist can do way better. But then you find out they're on a time crunch, right?
I think that there are definitely like going to be situations where stuff happens
The deadline
in that regard.
can't be
But
correct.
And yeah.
right, but their goal in their head is to make it like the best that it can be no matter what. And
Right.
I've kind of like bucked back against that. I'm like, I don't like that. Like that doesn't make sense to me. This is a job and it should pay me, shouldn't it? Yeah. I mean, like I shouldn't have to.
Right.
Nikki, do you
But
think that's like because of your corporate background where you were working like a news station
I mean,
or a newspaper?
Yeah,
maybe
because when
like
you corporate work, you're like, if I screw this up, I'm in trouble.
Like Alan knows this, and anyone that's listened knows this. Like, I don't really have any strong inclination to work for Wizards or anything like that for that reason. Like, I have zero fucks to ever work for like a card game company or like a board game company or anything like that. That's why I'm in advertising now. Because it's like one of the few industries that pays well. Weirdly enough, respects your time, even though the deadlines are like silly. It's like a few hours or so.
Yep.
For like the shit they want done.
But I mean, you're also really good at it. There's not a lot of. I have friends who work in the advertising, and some of that stuff seems so stressful to me. Like, I don't think I'd be as quick as you are, or as good.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, it is like part of that is because also like my background is like doing apparel design, which had a very similar work environment. So
you want to come make some shirts for me already?
ABC.
See, Nikki, this is how I work.
Maybe when I leave,
when he gets
permanently,
gives him a big middle finger.
Yeah, it's kind of like the same philosophy I had with comics for a while, where when I stopped doing comics,
sure,
I told myself like I will never do another comic again, and I haven't done one since. But now I'm getting to a point where it's like, maybe I could do one for fun, for like myself. I'm still not at the point where
will never do a comic book again. It's too stressful. I can't do. You are good at sequential art, though.
You know what though? Like even that though, I would say the people I know that are doing comics, of my friends that are still doing comics, they're the ones that did their own IP, and that's the main reason they're still doing it, is because they nurtured a thing,
right,
and developed it and everything. Whereas like the people that got into comics for like more base reasons, where it's like, oh, I want to work in comics, or I want to work on Batman or Superman, or those people largely have left the industry by now.
Sure.
For various reasons. Like I know one friend, he was like, fuck this, man, does not pay enough. I'm gonna go be an art director for a coffee house. It's like cool.
I mean, it pays well. Like, you know.
I last I heard from him, he was much happier doing that kind of thing. And like, yeah, like I think it plays back into that imposter syndrome stress or whatever, where you're kind of like you pour so much of your energy into trying to make the thing good that it almost comes at a detriment of thinking about like just basic life shit that makes way more sense. As in, like, am I getting paid enough for this? Is this encroaching my work-life balance?
Right.
I'm going to be satisfied with later, even where it's something.
We're never satisfied with the work, and I think that's because we're always learning, right? Like you mentioned earlier, Nikki, how like you did a piece a year ago.
I think you can get to a point where. Like you can get to a point where once you're done with it, you don't initially say this fucking sucks.
Sure.
You can finish it and you can say, not bad. And then you put it away, and then like maybe a year or two later, or like several years later, you look at it again and you're like, honestly, this is much better than I thought.
I mean,
I give myself enough credit at the time.
I've got pieces that I want to like revisit, but then you know, I also mentored under Sean Murray for world building. He was the one who was like, stop. He's like, stop going back to old pieces and redoing them and all that. You have to move forward. Like, sure, that piece doesn't look as good as the new stuff does. That's fine, because you made that piece at a time where you only knew that much. And yeah, you can redo it if you want to, but you really should be making new stuff. You know, like, that's the goal, right? New art all the time. I mean, I don't mean you have to do it all the time. Like, take a break, you know, but you get what I'm saying. And
yeah.
To go real back one more step, when Nikki said I'm always closing on deals, like Andrew had once told me, like, how do you keep getting all these guests? And I'm like, it's because I literally reach out to, like, the same way I reach out to you, Nikki, on Twitter. But I'm like, oh, this artist would be awesome on the show. You know, so I just reach out and I ask. Like, I've gotten like some people where I didn't, like, we got Donato on here, and I didn't think Donato would ever.
I saw that you guys got Donato. I was like, wow.
Donato and I are friends I've known him for a while now because anyone who knows me knows I'm pretty good at network. I have a degree in marketing and I have a degree in networking, but I grew up in Chicago. So one of those things I was always telling my cousins was like, just talk to people and get to know them. Like, I'm not working in angle.
Close mouth and get fed.
It's just good to be friends with people, right? People like Donato and stuff. Yeah. I was never like, oh, I'm going to work this angle with Donato and get in good with Donato. But he was an artist I really admired. So when I first met him, I just talked. And then I became friends with him, right? And then when I started this podcast show, I was just like, can't hurt to ask, right? I got Scott on, right? I asked Scott, and he was like, yeah, let's go. And I was like, cool. Again, can't hurt to ask. They could say no. I've had people say no left and right. You know, I mean, you had jury duty you had like the longest jury duty I've heard for anyone. I was like, what are you, part of a multiple murder investigation? Like,
no, it was like you know, where you call in every week to see, like, and then it could be like a multi-day thing.
Jesus.
Injury thing, or
do what?
Injury, or
no, it was just county,
just regular jury. Oh Jesus.
Dude,
but it was you were just in that big enough pool where they're like, come back, we may have more work for you.
Dude, the last time I got called in, I want to say it was 2018 or 2017. I remember I spent all day in there. I had to go, you know, you're sitting in that room, the judge is like asking you questions like, are you fit for this? There was one lady who literally was like, I ain't got time for this. I don't care about this. Like, straight truth. And the judge was like, well, we don't want her. And they had a bunch of, it was a you know, case against a person of color who shot another person. And so I was like, when he got to me, I was like, I really don't want to judge this guy because I don't know him. He looks like a nice guy. You know, I was like, I don't know. They said it was an accidental discharge of the gun. So in my head, I was like, immediately, he was also a black man. So in my head, I was like, y'all are just trying to put a black man in jail. This is the way I was reading the whole room, right? Because there was a bunch of, like, you know, but I could tell they wanted, like, people of color in the jury. The woman who got up was a black lady who's just like, I want no part of this. And she got dismissed, right? And then in my head, I was like, well, I can't use that angle. She just went with that, you know? So then when it got to me, I said, look, I'm a freelance artist. If you take me away for, like, two weeks or so, that's 2 weeks worth of money I'm going to lose. It's a lot more money than you guys are paying me. And I said, also, I really don't want to judge this man and put him in prison or not in prison. That's not my call. I don't like that, you know? And he's like, but you understand, as like a citizen, it's your job. And I'm like, I get it. I don't want to do it. And he was just like, well, you're not leaving. I'm like, what the fuck? You know? So like I went through this
the
whole thing, and this just very white judge. So I was like, fuck him. And then so I was like, whatever. I guess I have to do this. So then they said report back in 2 days, and we'll start the case. And then I was driving in from the city. This was like 30 minutes from where I lived in the city. I was driving, and apparently one of the lawyers in charge like fell down the stairs or fell down the stairs. I've been using quotes a lot because that's what's happening today, I guess. But apparently he fell down the stairs, and then they had to find a new lawyer. So that like they let all of us go because they're like, we don't know when this case is. Then I felt bad for this guy because he's apparently now just got to go sit in prison, right? Till they go through this whole process again. And that's what's happening in this. I'm not going to get into this. The system is broken. But
the judge on for my stuff was just like, I don't care what you do. I don't care how important your job is. I've had dentists in here that lose $8,000 a day by being on jury duty. So you're
Right.
gonna so fuck you. And I was like, oh shit, like because I was thinking the exact same thing as you.
They don't care about
like,
they don't care about if you're a freelancer.
I was like, this is gonna cut in, and no,
So
they didn't give a shit.
To move us to, we're a little over time, but I was talking to Andrew. I was talking to you about this last week to kind of come up with something different to do on the show. I was trying to type up questions we can ask that have nothing to do with anything. As random. Oh, she froze up.
Huh?
I'm still here, but it's.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's okay.
It's. I don't know what's going on.
So I came up with a list of questions based on random conversations I was having, and in my head I thought, let's ask a random question at the end of the show, and you'll understand when I ask the question. Is Nikki still with us?
Yeah,
I'm still here.
Oh, you're
I don't
still
know
here.
what's going on.
Oh, your video feed is frozen,
Yeah.
but you're still here. Okay, no worries. Okay, so the first question and this is my cousin and I came up with this, which is kind of stupid, but we were talking about DuckTales. All right. And we were talking about Donald Duck's nephews. And I was like, does Donald Duck have a sibling?
She
Right?
has a name, doesn't she?
She does?
I was gonna. Yeah, Delilah Duck.
I mean, I think canonically, like there's like a whole like lore about her and stuff.
Well, there you go. So we answered that
Right.
question.
I was
That
gonna
was
say,
fast
Alan,
and
did you?
I'm not a Disney fan,
Yeah.
clearly.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Carl.
Well,
Carl
I
Banks,
just like
man.
random shit.
Here's what I say. The next random question on here is, if you were to describe yourself as one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which one are you? I'm gonna stop on that question. By the way,
Michelangelo. Michelangelo, no question.
why? Because he's a party animal.
He was just the coolest. Like that's you don't want to be. I wasn't interested in being the brains, and I'm not going to be like the broody edgelord. So I want to be like.
Well, there goes Raphael for me.
Yeah, sorry,
Andrew. Who would you be?
Yeah, probably Donatello out of all of them.
See, wow. As Nikki like chopped the other ones down. We're like, all
Well,
right,
hey,
I
we
guess
got
we'll
3
pick
out
one
of
these
4.
guys. So there was a interesting, on a little side note before we close out. There was a cool thing I was watching. I can't remember if it was a TikTok video or a YouTube video, but the guy was talking about how each of the turtles is like one. First, he was talking about how their personas are specific to all of us, right? Because we are a little bit of us is in each of them for starters. But then he was talking about how Splinter gave them their weapons specifically based on their character. Like Michelangelo is actually probably the smartest one. He's the most attuned to learning all the things. And that's why he's got the nunchucks, which are apparently the hardest weapon to use in that group.
Yeah.
And then I don't remember any of the other ones. Like Raphael has the size. He's got the size, but they're not very they're not edge blades, like they're not bladed weapons like the katana blades. They're not as destructive as the other two. His are very much close combat. It fits. I have to find the video, but I was like, it was really interesting because I never really thought about it in that deep dive sense, right? And makes you wonder if Larson, is that the guy who created TMNT? Eric Larson? No, Kevin Eastman. Who, on another side note, I tried to get his autograph 3 times at San Diego Comic-Con. That dude's line kept getting capped. My brother-in-law has. Do you remember the original movie poster where they're peeking their heads out from under the sewer lids? He's got like 40 of these in a tube. Clean, crisp. And I thought, why? Why do you have 40 of these? And he said he worked, it's funny, he's like, I used to work for a movie theater. Yeah. And then I asked his sisters, my wife, right? And they said, he never worked for a movie theater. And I was just like, this motherfucker stole posters somewhere. But I took 3 of those with me to San Diego this year because I was trying to get them signed by Eastman. And now I left them with Ron because Ron and Vanessa could go to their studio and get it signed. I'm like, please do. But before we close out, since we're about 15 minutes over, first off, Nikki, thanks for being on the show. Appreciate it. Even though I hounded you multiple times. I'll stop DMing you in Cynthia's class.
I only did this so you would shut up, Alan.
It was right there, man. I was like, holy shit, Nikki's in this class. I'm gonna just ask her right now. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to talk about, like a personal project or anything random that you want to discuss before we close out?
No, I'm just I'm spending my time trying to figure out where to go from here.
Welcome to the rest of us.
Yeah, it's I'm pulling back on my workload that I'm accepting and going to finish out some projects at the end of this year, and then like I was discussing with Cynthia in the class, like it's just kind of like focus on learning and see
Are you
what
doing? You don't
happens.
do shows at all, though, right? Are you thinking about doing any
No.
shows?
I don't know. I don't like. I like going to cons. I don't like vending at cons.
Sure.
Like
I respect that.
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel like I kind of
I
fell into it. Like I really don't like crowds. So my first con was very apprehensive, but then once I realized I'm on the other side of the table and I got my own like personal space.
So since it's next week, then I'll ask, like, so have you gone to LuxCon or have you not ever?
That's to you, Nikki. Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I've only ever done local stuff. I've never traveled to go.
Should check out LuxCon someday.
Definitely recommend it. It's not like a big con, so it's nice. You get to meet like all other artists and stuff. Shit around. Basically, this just times 100.
Yeah, there's just
I like that part, but
it's just all the artists.
Inevitably, every con that I've vended at, somebody has trapped me at my like, and won't stop
You don't have
talking
to have a
to
table.
me.
You could just wander.
Just walk
I'm
away.
just like, please just go away. I've had people like in booths behind me that I could see that were behind the person who was like wouldn't stop talking to me, hold up signs saying, "Do you need help?" Like because
so you get better at that's a thing. I get what you're saying, and you're just like, how do I get rid of this person? I usually am just like, hey man, catch up with you later. And then if they don't take a hint, you literally got to be like, look, I need you to. I gotta go. Like I can't
get murdered. That's how you get murdered.
I mean, I understand what you're saying. I do it several times at like Gen Con. I've had people that stop by and talk forever, and I'm like, unless you're not buying something, I gotta get back to this. I'm here to work.
You also don't. I was gonna say you also don't have to vend at a LuxCon. You could just walk.
Yeah, you don't have to be in the showcase at all. You literally just show up, walk.
Yeah.
Like I only do the showcase because like I said, I was trying to, there's ADs walking around. So in my head, I thought that was the express route for them to see my work. This year, I was gonna get rid of my table, but we were supposed to do a rusty table, so I kept it. But then the moderators and I could not organize fast enough to get it done. And then I was like, well, I could get rid of it still if I want to, but I'm also bringing panels for like Tawny's going to use some of my panels. I thought, well, okay, here's what I'll do. I'll do one more time with some panels. And then if I go next year, which I probably will because I hate missing it, no showcase. Because it's nice to actually just walk around and not stress about having. And, even when if you're in the showcase, you can literally just set up and ask your booth neighbor to keep an eye on it. You can literally just walk away. No one's going to. The people around you will watch your stuff for you for the most part, right? Like, you'll notice if somebody's walking around with one of my medals. It's big, I'll be like, I didn't sell that, But yeah, consider it for next year, maybe. I mean, it's a good networking event, I would say.
So, are you going to continue to like message me, like, "Hey, did you sign up? Did you sign up? Did you sign up?" Am I not going to get rid of you? Is that what you're saying?
I mean,
this wasn't enough.
If that's what it takes.
Oh, jeez.
No, I'm not. If you decide your level of involvement.
So chat heard you say it, and so when I screenshot and post Alan's messages to me,
go ahead. Just so you guys know, I don't get it. All right. Well, yeah.
Cancel.
Everybody heard me say it. No, I'm not. I mean, again, if you want to do it. It would be nice if Spectrum still existed. That's another one, but it sounds like that thing's dead in the water. So, all right. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're definitely welcome back if you are interested. Next week, next week is the LuxCon. So the week after, we have on Lisa Lee, who's a voice actor. I think she's done stuff for, I don't know if she's done Crit Role. She's done stuff for several other D&D properties. I haven't heard from her, so I'm going to double check with her. Just going to message her like I did with Nikki, and then she's going to tell me she has Jerry, Judy, and Bale. But thanks for watching, guys. So there'll be a break next week. We'll be back on the 28th. If Lisa is busy, we might just do a Halloween episode like we try to every year. In that case, we'll get Tia on again. I'm sure she'll be free. So,
oh, man, yeah.
Cool. All right, I'm going to take us offline. Just give me a second. Thanks for everyone who's watching. Appreciate it.